I was working the front desk at a boutique hotel in Prague when an American businessman in his mid-40s walked up, pulling a massive suitcase behind him. It was around 9 p.m. on a Thursday. He slapped his credit card on the counter and said, "I need to check in, but first, where's the ice machine?" I blinked. "Ice machine?" He nodded like I was slow. "Yeah, you know, the machine. For ice. Every floor should have one." I tried to explain that we don't really have those here, but I could bring him a small bucket if he needed. He stared at me like I'd just told him we didn't have running water. How do people keep their drinks cold? That was my introduction to a very specific type of confusion. Then there was the American college student in Copenhagen who got genuinely upset that the grocery store clerk wouldn't accept her $50 bill. Not upset that they didn't take dollars. Upset that they refused to just exchange it for her right there at the register. She kept saying, "But it's American money. It's worth more." The clerk, bless her patience, tried explaining that this was a supermarket, not a currency exchange. The girl behind her in line finally said in perfect English, "The bank is 2 blocks that way." The American left her groceries on the belt and walked out. Or the retired couple in rural France who flagged down my taxi near Bordeaux. Sweet people. Probably late 60s. They showed me a photo on their phone of the Eiffel Tower and asked how long it would take to drive there. I said about 6 hours, maybe more with traffic. The wife looked confused. "But we're in France." "Yes," I nodded. "And the Eiffel Tower is in France," she continued. "Also, yes." Her husband jumped in. "So why would it take 6 hours? Texas isn't even that big." I didn't know where to start. I pulled up a map and showed them that France, while smaller than Texas, still has cities that are far apart. They seemed disappointed, like I was personally responsible for French geography. My personal favorite was the guy in Barcelona who walked into the pharmacy where my cousin works and demanded Tylenol. When she offered him paracetamol, he got defensive. "No, I need the real stuff." American Tylenol. She explained they're the same active ingredient. He shook his head. American medicine is stronger. Everyone knows that. He left empty-handed, presumably to suffer through his headache with patriotic pride. But that was just the beginning. The language barrier stories are my favorite because they start with such confidence. Americans assume that speaking English louder somehow makes it more universal. I've seen it dozens of times. Working as a tour guide in Amsterdam, there was this digital nomad, maybe 28, laptop sticker covered, who joined my canal tour on a Tuesday afternoon. It was drizzling, typical October weather. During the tour, I mentioned we were passing the Anne Frank house. He raised his hand. "Is that like a restaurant?" The entire boat went silent. An older German tourist whispered something to his wife. I explained, as gently as I could, what the Anne Frank house actually was. The American's face went red. "Oh man," I thought. "Never mind, but here's the thing." He recovered and actually asked good questions after that. Sometimes the confusion is just genuine ignorance, not malice. Then there was the woman in Budapest at the thermal baths. View was working the ticket counter that summer. She wanted to know if the water was regular hot or European hot. I asked what she meant, Celsius hot. I can't do Celsius. I need it in real degrees. I told her the water was about 40 degrees Celsius. She looked horrified. 40 degrees? That's freezing. Why would anyone bathe in freezing water? It took 3 other tourists explaining that Celsius works differently before she understood. She still seemed suspicious of the whole system, like we'd invented it specifically to confuse Americans. My friend who works at a grocery store in Oslo told me about an American student who brought a package of meat to the counter and asked if it was safe to eat raw, because the date says it's from the future. She'd read the day, month, year, format as month, day, year. The date said 15/03/2024. She thought it meant March 15th of the past. She'd somehow convinced herself European food dating was so advanced it predicted freshness into the future, or that the meat was expired by a year. The logic required for that interpretation was honestly impressive. There was this couple in Warsaw, probably mid-30s, at the restaurant where I used to wait tables. They ordered Jurek, a traditional sour rye soup. When it arrived, the husband tasted it and immediately called me over. "This tastes like it went bad. We need a fresh batch." I assured him it was supposed to taste sour. That's the whole point of the soup. His wife backed him up. In America, if something tastes like this, you send it back. They ended up ordering pierogi instead. But they told other tourists at their hotel that Polish food was spoiled because nobody complained about it. The review they left online still makes local chefs laugh. The most elaborate language confusion I witnessed was at the train station in Brussels. An American woman, maybe 45, approached the information desk where I was volunteering during a holiday rush. She needed to get to Bruges, but kept pronouncing it Brugge, like it rhymed with hug. The attendant kept saying Brugge with the correct pronunciation. This went back and forth maybe 6 times. Finally, she yelled, "Do you speak English or not?" The attendant, who was speaking perfect English, calmly pointed at the departure board. The American looked at it, looked back, and said, "That says Brugge. I need Brugge." Turns out she thought they were 2 different cities. She'd seen it spelled one way in her guidebook and heard it pronounced differently, so her brain created a second fictional Belgian city. She missed her train while arguing about it. Working in European hospitality, you learn pretty fast that American expectations around service are just different. Not wrong, not right, just operating on a completely separate frequency. I was bartending in Reykjavik during the summer tourism rush when this thing happened that I still think about. A guy in his early 30s, tech startup vibes, sits down around 11 p.m. on a Saturday. Orders a beer. Normal start. Then he pulls out his laptop, spreads out his charger and asks if we have outlets. We do. So fine. But then he orders just one more beer over the next 3 hours. When I brought his tab, he looked genuinely confused. "Why are you rushing me? I'm a paying customer." Here's the thing. In Iceland, you don't camp at the bar during prime hours on a single beer per hour. The tables have a higher minimum expectation, especially on weekends. I tried explaining this. He got defensive. I tip well in America. I had to tell him we don't really do tipping here. And also, that wasn't the point. He left a 1-star review calling us hostile to remote workers. My cousin manages a small hotel in Porto, and she's got stories for days. Her best one is about an American family who checked in for 4 nights. On the morning of day 2, the mom came downstairs at 6:30 a.m. asking why housekeeping hadn't been to their room. Yet, my cousin explained that housekeeping starts at 9 a.m. and that they don't typically clean rooms with guests still checked in unless requested. Mom looked baffled. "So you're telling me I have to sleep in a dirty room for 4 days?" My cousin offered to have the room cleaned while they were out sightseeing. But what if I want to nap? This went on for 15 minutes. They ended up checking out a day early, claiming European hotels have third-world standards. The room was basically spotless when they left. By the way, there's this German restaurant in Munich where I picked up shifts last year during Oktoberfest. The beer garden culture is sacred there. You sit where there's space. You share tables. You don't get waited on hand and foot. This American couple, both probably late 50s, sat down at a communal table and immediately got uncomfortable when locals sat next to them. The husband kept trying to flag down servers. "Excuse me, we haven't ordered yet." Nobody came because you order at the bar. After about 20 minutes, he stood up and announced to the entire beer garden, "The service here is terrible. We've been sitting here forever." A regular, this older Bavarian guy, finally took pity and explained the system in broken English. The American couple left anyway, muttering about how real restaurants have table service. I drove a taxi in Dublin for 3 years, and Americans always had opinions about the speed of service everywhere. One business traveler got in my cab near Temple Bar around 8 p.m. He'd just left a pub and was fuming. I waited 45 minutes for fish and chips. 45 minutes! I could have gone to McDonald's 3 times. I tried explaining that Irish pubs cook food fresh to order, that it's not fast food, that the whole point is to relax and enjoy the atmosphere. He cut me off. Time is money. They're losing customers with that attitude. I wanted to tell him that the pub had been there for 150 years and probably wasn't worried about his business model advice, but I kept that to myself. The wildest service expectation story comes from a cafe in Stockholm, where my girlfriend works. An American woman came in on a Sunday morning with her laptop, ordered a coffee, and set up camp. After about 90 minutes, she walked up to the counter and asked if they could turn off the music because she was trying to work. The barista politely said, "No." The woman huffed back to her seat. 30 minutes later, she asked if they could lower the volume. Again, no. Finally, she packed up and left, but not before saying, "In Seattle, coffee shops actually care about their customers." The barista's response? "This isn't Seattle." The whole cafe applauded. The geographic confusion is honestly the most entertaining because it comes from this deep place of confidence. Americans learn geography differently, and it shows. I work as a museum guide at the Anne Frank House in Amsterdam, and we get a lot of school groups. Last spring, this high school group from somewhere in the Midwest came through. Smart kids, asking good questions. But during the Q&A, one student raised her hand and asked, "So when Anne Frank was hiding, why didn't she just go to Germany where it was safer?" The silence was deafening. I had to gently explain that Germany was where the Nazis came from. That's why they were hiding from them. Another student jumped in trying to help. "Oh yeah, but she could have gone to West Germany, right? They thought the Cold War division existed during World War II. Their teacher looked like she wanted to disappear." We spent an extra 20 minutes doing an impromptu history lesson. There was this American couple in their late 20s staying at the hostel where I worked in Krakow. They were planning a trip to Eastern Europe and kept asking about how to get to Russia since we're already in the East. I pulled up a map and showed them that Russia is about 500 kilometers from Krakow across multiple borders and requires a visa that takes weeks to process. They seemed shocked. But Poland is Eastern Europe, and Russia is Eastern Europe, so the guy actually said, "Can't you just drive there? It's all connected." Technically, yes, but also spectacularly, no. They ended up going to Prague instead, which they kept calling Prague, Russia, for some reason. My favorite was working border control at the Öresund Bridge between Denmark and Sweden. It was a summer evening, around 7 p.m., still bright outside because Nordic summer, an American tourist, maybe mid-40s, pulls up in a rental car. I asked for his passport. He looks confused. Why? I'm already in Europe. I explain he's crossing from Denmark to Sweden. He looks more confused. Aren't those the same thing? I assure him they're different countries. He goes, "But they're both Scandinavian. That's like asking for my passport between New York and New Jersey." I try to explain that Scandinavian countries are sovereign nations with actual borders. He gets a little defensive. Well, they should really make that clearer. How is anyone supposed to know? Sir, the giant signs that say, "Welcome to Sweden," might be a hint. There was an incident in Athens at the archaeological site where I give tours. An American tourist, probably early 60s, was looking at the Parthenon and asked when it was built. I said around 447 BC. He laughed. "No, like when was it actually built? The real date?" I repeated, 400. He shook his head. "That can't be right. America is only about 250 years old, and we have buildings older than that." I didn't even know where to start unpacking that logic. His wife tried to help. "Honey, I think BC means it was before America." Close enough, I guess. He spent the rest of the tour questioning every date I gave. Like ancient history was a conspiracy we'd all agreed to maintain. Then there was the college student in Prague who argued with me about the location of Prague. She insisted we were in Hungary. I'm Czech. I work here, I live here. Prague is the capital of the Czech Republic. She pulled out her phone and showed me a map where she'd searched Prague, and it had auto-corrected to some small town in Hungary. Rather than admit her phone made a mistake, she doubled down. Well, maybe there are two Pragues. There aren't. Well, maybe Czechia is part of Hungary now. It isn't. She left the tour convinced I was wrong. I hope she made it to wherever she was actually trying to go. The most elaborate geography. Fail happened at a hotel in Bruges, where my friend works the front desk. An American guest called down at 11 p.m. asking for directions to the Netherlands. My friend asked which city in the Netherlands. Just the Netherlands. I want to see it tomorrow. She explained that the Netherlands is a whole country. He said, yeah, but how far is the main part? She tried explaining that Amsterdam is about a 3-hour drive. He got frustrated. No, I mean the tulips and windmills. The actual Netherlands part. He thought the Netherlands was a single tourist attraction, like a theme park. She eventually gave him directions to a windmill museum 30 minutes away. He came back the next day thrilled, telling everyone he'd done the Netherlands in an afternoon. But the absolute best story, the one I'll never forget, happened during my last week working at a pharmacy in Copenhagen before I switched careers. It was a cold Tuesday in November, around 3 p.m., already getting dark outside. This American woman, probably late 30s, came in looking frazzled. She needed cold medicine, but couldn't understand why everything was in Danish. Fair enough. I started showing her the English labels on the backs. She picked up one box, looked at it, and said, "Why is this in milliliters? I need ounces." I explained that Europe uses the metric system. She knew that already, she said. But she needed real measurements because she had no idea how much a milliliter was. I grabbed a measuring cup from the shelf to show her the conversion. She waved it away. That's not going to help me at home. I suggested she could just follow the dosage on the box. It's clearly marked. She got more agitated. But what if I take too much? What if I die because I don't understand milliliters? I assured her that wouldn't happen. The dosage is very clear. Then she said something that I'm still not sure was serious. Can't you just relabel it in American? I took a breath. I explained as calmly as possible that the metric system is used by basically every country on Earth except the United States, Myanmar, and Liberia. That pharmaceutical companies aren't going to print special labels for American tourists, that millions of people successfully take medicine measured in milliliters every single day, without issue. She stared at me, then she said, and I quote, "Well, maybe that's why Europe has so many problems." She bought the medicine anyway, mostly because she was desperate. As she left, she turned back and said, "You know, in America, they make things easy to understand." I just smiled and wished her a good recovery. What got me wasn't the confusion itself. People get confused about measurements all the time. It was the absolute certainty that her way was the default, the real way, and everything else was just stubbornly refusing to conform. That's the thing about these stories. They're not really about ice, machines, or milliliters, or maps. They're about the jarring moment when someone realizes their normal isn't everyone's normal, and sometimes they really don't want to accept that. I still think about these encounters all the time, even though I'm not in hospitality anymore. Every few weeks, a friend sends me a new story. The American who thought the European Union was a single country. The tourist who asked why Finland doesn't just use normal time instead of being ahead of New York. The woman who got offended that a Portuguese beach had topless sunbathers because don't they know Americans vacation here? And these stories, they never stop coming. Somewhere right now, someone is probably asking a hotel receptionist why the shower has a bidet attachment instead of normal American. Plumbing. Someone is arguing with a train conductor about why the departure time is written in 24-hour format. Someone is genuinely baffled that their T-Mobile phone works in Paris. The world is big, and it turns out a lot of it doesn't run on American expectations. Some people find that fascinating. Others find it personally offensive. And me? I just keep collecting the stories.